So, in just 3 weeks, you will be opening your doors to Elijah, Eliyahu Hanavi, to join in your Passover Seder. Maybe he'll drink a little better wine this year, you guys. But he's meant to come, hopefully, to announce the Messianic age. As Passover is coming to your Seder table very soon, it's time to get ready. In preparation, a number of us through our adult learning program, Spark, are taking a class over the next few weeks from the amazing scholar Daniel Matt, who recently wrote a text about the life of Elijah throughout Jewish literature. We had one class, but the next class is this Wednesday, and it streams online, and you can probably still contact us at the temple office on Ariana SDK and join the opportunity to learn from one of the great teachers of our lifetime. He's an amazing man, Daniel Matt. Also the translator of the Zohar. That's who we have living in the area. Well, in his new book, Elijah, Dr. Matt reminds us that before he took on the role of attending every bris, I just did a little bris, and there's the Kisei Eliyahu for him. Before being called out at every Havdalah, Eliyahu Hanavi, right? And before being depicted in Jewish folklore, disguising himself as an impoverished person who might come and test your real generosity, he was a Navi, a prophet for social justice. That biblical Elijah bravely stood up against the northern kingdom's ruler Ahab, who, having achieved great wealth and power, did what so many people do when they get to that position. He abrogated his royal responsibilities. He forgot that he needed, as a king of Israel, to serve as an exemplar and embrace Jewish values in his leadership, like love of justice, standing up for monotheism, helping the poor. He did bad things as Ahab. And so stepping forward to speak out against this behavior of a Jewish leader, Eliyahu Hanavi, the prophet, prophets don't hold back. And so he didn't. They're not about being popular. And he said directly to the king, "It's not I who've brought trouble on Israel, but you and your father's house by forsaking the commandments of Adonai and going after the Baalim, after the idols. Because you've committed yourself to doing what's evil in the sight of Adonai, I will bring disaster upon you. I will make a clean sweep of you." In the face of such leadership, Eliyahu had the courage to speak his truth. And there you have in the Bible, in our Tanakh, canonized for all to see, the challenge that just because one has power, one does not also have the responsibility to uphold Jewish values. When leaders abandon the Torah, no matter how popular they may be, no matter how they might wrap themselves up in religious garb, our people are not supposed to stay silent. I think of Eliyahu's example now. As I recall, just a few weeks ago, standing with Rabbi Beth in the middle of the streets of Tel Aviv, with over 150,000 Israelis of all types, secular, religious, liberal and Orthodox, Israeli Arabs from all religious communities as well. And what were they doing? We were protesting the proposition of the Netanyahu government to change the way the Israeli judiciary functions. Now, their call for change has been masked as a reform. It's a word that we Reform Jews really like because it implies progress, reaching towards improvement for the greater good. But we know that this proposal, as it currently stands, is not a reform, but an attempt to weaken judicial oversight. The current Israeli government wants to eliminate the judiciary as a check on their power. And you will read about the need for Jewish reform in many papers in the state of Israel. You'll read people who say that Israel has no constitution, but just basic laws. You'll read that the court's made up of Ashkenazi elite who've overstepped their power and limited the government's ability to function. That's all out there. Well, these days we can read a lot of things, inundated with information meant to confuse. But if you follow the overwhelming majority of the Jewish press and a rare unification of Jews from AIPAC to J Street, from the federations to all of us in our movements, Reform and Conservative, you'll understand that the rallies have grown from 150,000 to 300,000 people, which would be the equivalent of having 4 million Americans go to a rally. You can understand that Israelis see the current government proposal as a danger to their democracy. The proposal removes the only check on the parliament, or Knesset, which is the governing body of Israel. It's a unicameral parliament. It would keep them from doing whatever they want, like overriding the courts when a leader has been found guilty of wrongdoing, and they won't be limited anymore. Like forcing women to ride in the back of the bus in different parts of the state. Like overriding the courts when a leader's been found guilty of wrongdoing. Like changing the law of return, or simply rejecting the founding principles of Israel's Declaration of Independence, which states that this state will promote the development of the country for the benefit of all its inhabitants. It will be based on precepts of liberty and justice and peace taught by the Hebrew prophets. It will uphold the full social and political equality of all citizens without distinction of race, creed, or sex. It will guarantee full freedom of conscience, worship, education, and culture. It will safeguard the sanctity of all shrines and holy places and the inviolability of all religions. And it will dedicate itself to the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. What I'm saying that they want to reject is not hyperbole. It's exactly what the members of the government have said in various media outlets. They really do want to put women back on the back of the bus, folks. And so, like Elijah, we can't be silent, especially we who so love Israel and believe that it is the most important project of the Jewish people. I, from the pulpit, may not speak out on what way Israel should defend itself militarily or how it must negotiate the end of the conflict. That's not my role. I don't live there. My life's not at risk. But when the project of the Jewish people starts to turn towards the behavior of Ahab and make an idolatry of power rather than embrace democracy, well, then Elijah reminds us not to be silent. The project of Israel in each of its expressions, whether under King David or during the Second Temple period, and even today, has never meant to be just a refuge or home for the Jewish people to develop our might. No, it was always meant to be the exemplar of the Jewish messianic ideal, a light unto the nations, where love of justice and loving the stranger and pursuit of peace, because all of us are made in God's image, is front and center of Israeli political behavior and governance. But the problem is that the current leadership of Israel, a coalition made up of Likud, of ultra-Orthodox and religious extremists, has forgotten that teaching or willfully chooses to ignore it. And we American Jews can't bury our heads in the sand or pretend that this is just an internal issue. For it goes to the very nature of what Judaism is and what the state of Israel is supposed to be. And it begs the question, can we, the Jewish people, rule with justice in our own land, or must we always remain a diaspora people? We have to be sure that history's answer is yes. But that won't happen if we stand aside and let Jewish political leaders, some of whom pretend to be very, very traditional, bow down at the idols of mammon, the idols of power. So what do we do? Well, I want to ask you again to keep writing the consulates wherever you live, letting them know you're concerned. Their letters, your letters, go back to the Israeli government. They see them. Here in San Francisco, send letters to the J Weekly and to whatever Jewish publication you read. We ask your support as rabbis of Congregation Emanu-El, that we continue sending out our message of embracing a compromise that will help Israel be a better home for all. You can give after Shabbat financial support to the NGOs that are working to support Israeli democracy, like the New Israel Fund, supported in this city, or like the Israeli Reform Movement, the IMPJ. It was so great a few weeks ago having one of their leaders, Ori Erez, I get her name wrong all the time, Likovsky, speak from our pulpit a few weeks ago. Their funding is going to be cut off by this extremist government. And in a country where funding of synagogues is through the government, we need to help them even more. And they are a voice for justice and democracy. And it's so important that we understand that our speaking out in such a strong way does not mean a boycott or rejection of Israel, but a commitment to work even harder to build up the vision of Zionism that called not just for the renewal of our people in the land. No, like Eliyahu, we must not give up on the nation of Israel, but speak truth to our leaders and not hold back, upholding the holy charge God gives our people not to be like any others, but to be an Or LaGoyim, a light unto the nations. Passover is just 3 weeks away. Let Eliyahu in this time, and understand why he's really there, to keep guiding us, that we might bring on the Messianic age. Shabbat Shalom.